Real Talk Radio.
The party.
All right, guys, got a couple announcements for you. Real Talk Radio with Dan Lane. First and foremost, I need to announce at first was a suspension of my YouTube account, now terminated. After careful research of the content that I posted concerning David Hogg, they deemed it bullying, harassment, and for that, without even giving me a second strike, they terminate my YouTube. All my content's gone, everything. It's all gone. I've got over 500 videos gone. So for that, I do have another YouTube account. I will not be very active on YouTube. I'm going to be more on DTube than anything because DTube is blockchain internet. They cannot ban my content. I don't even think they could see my content to ban it. And they pay more than YouTube. So that's the first announcement. Now I will be, don't get me wrong, I will be active on YouTube a little bit, posting, stuff like this here and there. I'm walking a very fine line. I can't do anything at all that most people can do. I can't have music playing in the background. I can't even recite famous quotes from founding fathers or anything like that. I can't do anything because they hit me up with copyright infringement, even though it's based on my ideology and the way I see things. So that's how they get you. And that's how they got me. So, just a heads up. If you guys are looking for me to be more active on YouTube, I would highly encourage you to get a Steemit account. Log into DTube. It's just like YouTube. It's actually growing more. There's a lot less interference, with violations and whatnot. It's total freedom of speech. I'm also on Minds. So I will be there. So times are changing. Things are going in a different direction, and I'm actually quite happy with it. Even though YouTube yanked away over 400 of my subscribers in the time it took for me to watch a movie. Okay? In the time it took for me to watch a movie, 400 subscribers gone. A lot of people were hitting me up wondering why I blocked them, why I kicked them off. I never did. So, there's that. All right, now, this is very interesting news that I found earlier today. As everybody knows, the left is really tackling the guns. They want our guns, people. They want our guns, and it's not to save lives. It's not to, because if anything, now I've read a couple of resources here with what went down in Maryland during a gun confiscation raid. Now, this isn't the first time in American history that government was met with equal resistance. This is why they want to take your semi-automatic weapons. They want to be the ones with all the high-powered weapons, and they want to leave you with your little pea shooters. Like that's going to do anything. Like that's going to stand up. And it appears that the come and take it slogan that old dude thought was real funny, seems like now it's become more of a reality. I think it was an accurate phrase as to what would happen if they tried to come and take away your Second Amendment, your right to defend yourself, your right to bear arms. And it blew up in their face. 72 people killed, 200 people injured during this exchange. Now, what's interesting about this particular news source is that I'm not very familiar with it, but others have reported on it. So this probably is a little bit more reputable due to the fact that I've read this article about 20 times since I woke up this morning, and there is no punctuation errors, no spelling errors. It seems like something a legitimate person reporting the news, an editor, actually knows what they're doing, because that's how I always told you. You could tell, how authentic the story was due to, the level of professionalism. So, breaking, 72 killed resisting gun confiscation in Maryland. National Guard units seeking to confiscate a cache of recently banned assault weapons were ambushed by elements of a paramilitary extremist faction, is what they're calling. Military and law enforcement sources estimate that 72 were killed and more than 200 injured before government forces were compelled to withdraw. Now, we go back to 2004, that big standoff. Well, the government tried to steal all the livestock and take the land and said it was the government's property when it was actually bought and owned by ranchers. And they were met with equal resistance. This is the importance of keeping your guns and not surrendering to the alt-left that is trying to instill pity in you for these poor children. And yes, it is horrible. Shootings are horrible. I'm not going to go there. Because if you listen to me, you know that I am very empathetic. I understand that we have criminal elements in the U.S., but let's face it, we are a nation built on violence. And that's just the way it is. You'll never get rid of violence. I don't care what you take away. You could take away firearms, you could take away knives, but you can't stop some hoodlum developing some Molotov cocktails and going and throwing them in a loose crowd, setting people on fire. You go to other areas of the world, there's acid attacks, there's cocktails being thrown, there's stabbings, there's beaten to death in the head with a pole. You're not going to stop violence, so just get over your high horses, people. We actually have a way lower crime rate than Britain. Now, that's a fact. You could look that up. Speaking after the clash, Massachusetts Governor Thomas Gage declared that the extremist faction, which was made up of local citizens, has links to the radical right-wing tax protest movement. This is exactly the ingredients that started the Civil War. So we're on the brink of a civil war. They know it. I think they want it. I honestly think they do. I really don't think that they thought that they were just going to come through, a bunch of patriotic Americans were just going to roll over and hand over their rights, because we know our history and we know what happens to people when they do that. It's not science, people. It's not even an ingenious idea. This is history repeating itself right here. Governor Gage blamed the extremists for recent incidents of vandalism directed against internal revenue offices. So clearly they're going after these entities that are going around and confiscating people's property, their belongings, their this, their that, and another, which is totally unconstitutional. The IRS should never even exist. These are people that are finally tired of being governed by tyrants if they are willing to stand up. You know, in my mind, the militia says, we will die defending our freedoms if you will die trying to take them. So the governor, who described the group's organizers as criminals, of course they're going to say criminals because these are militia, these are patriots, issued an executive order authorizing the summary arrest of any individual who has interfered with the government's efforts to secure law and order. Here's the thing. They're not trying to secure law and order. They're trying to take your rights. The military raid on the extremist arsenal followed widespread refusal by the local citizenry to turn over recently outlawed assault weapons. Now, there they go with that assault weapons shit again. This is what I love right here. There they go using that term, assault weapons. Gage issued a ban on military-style assault weapons and ammunition earlier in the week. This decision followed a meeting in early this month between government and military leaders at which the governor authorized the forcible confiscation of illegal arms. Well, that was pretty stupid on your behalf, wasn't it, son? One government official, speaking on condition of anonymity, pointed out that none of these people would have been killed had the extremists obeyed the law and turned over their weapons voluntarily. Yeah, that sounds like the British when they came over here after we were dumping their tea, and we were stockpiling ammunition. They didn't like that. So that's what they tried to call us, a nation of terrorists. They had to come in and try to neutralize, but instead they were met with equal force, and thus we won the war and got our rights and got our Constitution, and the left is trying to take it. Government troops initially succeeded in confiscating a large supply of outlawed weapons and ammunition. However, troops attempting to seize arms and ammunition in Lexington met with resistance from heavily armed extremists who had been tipped off regarding the government's plans. During a tense standoff in the Lexington Town Park, National Guard Colonel Francis Smith, commander of the government operation, ordered the armed group to surrender and return to their homes. The impasse was broken by a single shot, which was reportedly fired by one of the right-wing extremists. See, I love how they say right-wing extremist. What about the left-wing extremists that are trying to take your constitutional rights away? And this is nothing new. The very first time they ever restricted a person's ability to purchase and own and bear arms began the war on your constitutional rights. This has been going on for decades. And now they're moving in full swing. So, 8 civilians were killed in the ensuing exchange. Ironically, the local citizenry blamed government forces rather than the extremists for the civilian deaths. Yeah, because they know what they're doing is unconstitutional and what they're doing will start a civil war. It's already started. Before order could be restored, armed citizens from surrounding areas had descended upon the guard units. Colonel Smith, finding his forces overmatched by the armed mob, ordered a retreat. So there's victory right there. Now the governor's going to have to sit back and do some serious thinking about how far he wants to take this. When it comes down to American patriots, I don't think it's even a matter in question. I think, you know what? We'll take it as far as you want to take it. And a lot of people who had family who fought and died for your freedoms would turn over in their graves if they saw you laying down your rights and handing over your firearms to a tyrant. So, the governor has called upon citizens to support the State National Joint Task Force in its effort to restore law and order. He also demanded the surrender of those responsible for planning and leading the attack against the government troops. You demand the surrender. Well, that's not how it works in a war, bud. That's just not how it works in a war. You wanted one, you got one. Samuel Adams, Paul Revere, and John Hancock, who have been identified as ringleaders of the extremist faction, remain at large. And this, my fellow American friends, is how the American Revolution began in April 20th, 1775. History, people. Study it, learn it, or repeat it. That's the only chance you got. And I think we're so far past it right now, I don't think that there is any easy way out. That we're gonna have to make the sacrifice. Our forefathers made the sacrifice. We're gonna have to make the sacrifice. If we're not willing to make the sacrifice, then we just turn over and let them have their one world government, their tyranny, the enforced vaccinations. The government can come take your house at any given point, and what are you gonna do about it? Not a damn thing, because you can't. You are no match for them. You handed over your match for them. So, in the live chat room right now, I got Cole asking, how about the fact that the FBI raided Trump's lawyer's office for info about a porn star, but did nothing when the Florida shooter was reported to them many times? What kind of shit is that? Yeah, exactly. Well, that's because it's all the left. They're all part of the same team. They're all in bed together. We can sit and speculate all day. We all know what it is. They want to take down Trump so bad